installment of the Legends of Mythology. And yet again, we are moving to another new pantheon. A yet again less well-known pantheon, that being the Japanese pantheon. If you would like to see any gods covered in this series, just leave a comment down below. Thor, Loki, Zeus even. Just leave a comment down below with who you would like to see next. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and get right into the video that I have lost my script for. The main narrative of the Nihon Shokai is Izanagi and Izanami procreating after creating the Japanese arpeggio, or basically the ruling class. To them were born in the following order: Ohiryumi no Mushi, or Amaterasu; Sukiyomi, the leech child Hiroko, and Susano. And the Kujiki, Amaterasu, Sukiyomi, and Susanoo were born when Izanagi went to the Akahuaga by the river mouth of the Tachibana in Himuka, the island of Tsukuyoshi, and bathed in the river, which leads to the shrine of the Misogagi Goten, where a purification act of Misogi was located beside the nearby Etna Shrine, in modern-day Akawigara. He performed the Miyazaki prefecture to purify himself after visiting Yumi, the underworld, in a failed attempt to rescue his deceased wife, Izanami. Amaterasu was born when Izanagi washed his left eye. Osukiyomi was born when he washed his right, and Susanoo was born when he washed his nose. Izanagi then appointed Amaterasu to rule Tamagakara, the plane of high heavens, Tsukuyomi, the night and the moon, and Susanoo, the seas, and to become the god of storms. After this, Izanagi no Mokito and Izanami no Mokito consulted together, saying, "We have now produced the great country, with the mountains, rivers, herbs, and trees. Why should we not procure someone who shall be Lord of the universe?" They then together produced the sun goddess, whose resplendent lustre of this child shone throughout all 6 quarters. Therefore the two deities rejoiced, saying, "We have many children, but none of them have been equals to this infant. She ought not be kept long of this land, but we ought of our own accord to send her at once to the heavens, and entrust her with the affairs of the heavens." At this time, heaven and earth were still not far separated, and therefore they sent her up to heaven via the ladder of heaven. At the first rays of dawn crossed the horizon, before all else touched the land of the rising sun, a realm of islands painted with the careful brushstrokes of his deities. That morning light which brings warmth and life is Amaterasu, the benevolent goddess of the sun. Universally, she is absolutely adored, less so though her brothers, Susanoo, the bringer of storms, whose jealousy of his sister's popularity drove him to burn her golden rice fields and shatter the sacred looms of her people. Grief-stricken at the destruction, Amaterasu sealed herself inside a deep cavern. Her people suffered, and the realm fell into crushing darkness. For an unknown amount of time, she stayed there, hidden away from the atrocities of the world, until one day came a thumping from outside. At first, she tried to ignore it, but she peered curiously out, only to stare into a polished bronze mirror. Blinded by her own reflection, Amaterasu was forced to creep further out to find the source of the sound. Hands grabbed her from either side and pulled her free of the cave. Gathered around her were hundreds of friends and loved ones. Atop a wide tub danced Yusumi, the goddess of mirth, who created the erratic drumming to the joy of all. Amaterasu smiled, and light came back into the world. Seeing all that depended on her and all those who loved her, Amaterasu vowed never again to hide from calamity. She would instead face it, just as a queen should. Amaterasu, also known as Amaterasu Ukikami or Orihimo no Muji no Kami, was gifted the mantle of goddess of the sun in the Japanese mythology and supreme deity of the heavens. Being one of the major deities of Shinto, she is also portrayed in Japan's earliest literary texts, the Kojiki and the Nihon Shoki, as the ruler, or one of the rulers, of the heavenly realm, Takamagara, and the mythical ancestress of the Japanese imperial house via her grandson Ninigi. Along with their siblings, the moon deity Sukiyomi and the impetuous storm god Susanoo, they are considered to be the three precious children, the three most important offspring of the ultimate creator god Izanagi. Amaterasu's chief place of worship, the grand shrine of Ise in Ise Mi Perfecta, is one of Shinto's holiest sites and a major pilgrimage center and tourist spot. As with other Shinto kami, she is also enshrined in a number of Shinto shrines throughout Japan. Before the Kojiki and the Ninoshoki agree in their description of Amaterasu as the daughter of Izanagi and the elder sister of Sukiyomi and Susanoo, the circumstances surrounding the birth of these three deities is debated. However, even with the high variance between the sources, it almost always ends the same way. Susanoo is the youngest child of the triplets, the younger brother to Amaterasu and Sukiyomi. However, Sukiyomi yet again being born as the middle child, with Amaterasu as the eldest in every case. So, that was just weird. Both the Kojiki and the Nihon Shoki agree in their description of Amaterasu as the daughter of the god Izanagi and the elder sister of both Sukiyomi and Susanoo. The circumstances surrounding the birth of these three deities, however, varies heavily between all three sources. In every source, however, even though their birth may be different, the order is always the same. It is Amaterasu, then Sukiyomi, and then Susanoo. Sorry, I I've got that backwards. Susano is Amaterasu, Susanoo, then Sukiyomi. Sukiyomi is the baby. So, moving on to the middle child, Susanoo. So, moving on to the middle child here, Sukiyomi. Sukiyomi no Mukitoto. Sukiyomi no Mikoto is the moon god in Japanese mythology and the Shinto religion. The name Sukiyomi is a compound of old Japanese words, suku meaning moon or month, becoming modern Japanese suki and yomi, reading and counting. The Nihon Shoki mentions this name spelled as Sokuyomi with a U instead of an O. But this Yumi is likely a variation of pronunciation of Yomi. An alternative interpretation is that his name is a combination of Sokyu and Mi, meaning moonlit, watching. Sukiyomi is the second of the 3 noble children born to Izanagi and Izanami. Sukiyomi again was born out of Izanagi's right eye, however, in an alternative story, which is not as widely recognized as the Kojiki and the Nihashoron. However, Sukiyomi was born from a mirror made of white copper that was in Izanagi's right hand. Sukiyomi angered Amaterasu when he killed Ukimuchi, the goddess of food. Amaterasu once sent up Sukiyomi to represent her at a feast presented by Ukimuchi. The goddess created the food by turning to the ocean and spitting out a fish, then facing a forest and spitting out game, and finally turning to a rice paddy and coughing up a bowl of rice. Sukiyomi was utterly disgusted by the fact that although it looked quite exquisite, the meal was made in such an absolutely disgusting manner. So he killed her. Soon, Amaterasu learned what happened, and she was angry, and she refused to look at Sukiyomi again. Further moving to another part of the sky, and this is the Shinto religion's explanation for the reason that day and night are never together. However, some say it was Susanoo that killed Ukimuchi, and Susanoo took the wrath of his sister in protection of his baby brother. And so again, just like for Amaterasu, I have a fun, small little tidbit on Sukiyomi here as well. Might makes right. To impose order and to bend the world to your will, these are the marks of a true leader. Only a true leader has the strength of will and the force of arms to make his enemies bow before him. Only a true leader deserves the respect and adulation of his followers. These are the guiding principles of Sukiyomi's existence. Proud, but not violent, he is the god of the moon and of the night. Wielding his twin Tanfa, Shingitsu and Mangitsu, he overcomes his enemies with effortless skill and a mocking laugh, forcing them to bow before him. For what good is victory without an audience to see it? He is opposite in every possible way to his older sister. Where she is light, he is dark. Where she is kind, he is cruel. But in his cruelty, there is purpose. Only a true leader cannot show weakness, cannot brook insult, even one unintentionally given. Such was the result. Such was the reason that Sukiyomi struck off the head of the goddess of plenty, Ukimochi. For her mannerisms offended him. An offense must be answered swiftly and surely as possible, lest weakness be revealed. Order must be maintained, whatever the cost. Materasu didn't understand this. She simply cast Sukiyomi from her sight, forever exiling him from the heavens and from his friends and family. The day would be hers, and the night his. Another insult. But one Sukiyomi is born in silence until the time comes again. Madness has cast a shroud across the world and its people. The order of all things break down. A true leader sees opportunity in this chaos. Sukiyomi will impose a new order, and one more like to his liking. A long night falls across the world. A new moon rises. So with the eldest children of the triplets taken out of the way here, let's go ahead and move on to the baby of the family, Susanoo, the god of storms. Susanoo is the youngest of the triplets, the youngest brother of both Amaterasu and Sukiyomi. He is a multifaceted deity with contradictory characteristics, being both good and bad, being portrayed in various stories either as a wild, impetuous god associated with the sea and storms, or as a heroic figure who killed the monstrous serpent, or even as a local deity linked with the harvest and agriculture. Syncretic beliefs that arose after the introduction of Buddhism to Japan also saw Susanoo being conflated with the deities of pestilence and disease. Susanoo, alongside Amaterasu and Suku, is one of the central deities of the imperial Japanese mythological cycle, recorded again in the Kojuki and the Nihon Shoki. One of the reports commissioned by the imperial court during the same period that these texts were written of the Izumo province in western Japan also contains a number of short legends concerning Susanoo or his children, suggesting a connection between the god and this region. In addition, a few other myths also hint at a connection between Susanoo and the Korean peninsula. Susanoo chooses to leave to explore the world and to get out on his own 2 feet. He no longer wishes to live in the shadow of his sister or have to deal with the wrath of his older brother. Before Susanoo leaves, he ascends to Takamagara, wishing to say farewell to Amaterasu. As he did, the mountains and rivers shook and the land quaked. Amaterasu, suspicious of his motives, went out to meet him, dressed in brand new armor and her faithful sword strapped at her hip. But when Susanoo proposed a trial by pledge to prove his sincerity, she accepted. In the ritual, the 2 gods chewed and spat out an object carried by the other, and some variants an item they each possessed. Both the Kojiki and the Shoki's main account relate that Amaterasu broke Susanoo's 10-span sword, Tusoku no Mokorari, into 3, chewed them, and spit them out. creating the three goddesses Takaprime, Tagahorame, and Ikishama Kanami. Susanoo then took the strings of the Magatama beads Amaterasu entwined in her hair and had around her wrists, and likewise chewed the beads and spat them out, giving birth to 5 male deities: Aimee no Asherohimi, Ama no Hohi, Amasukonoi, Ikotusono Koini, and Kumana o Nukusubi. All came into existence. And of course, a fun little story to wrap up the baby brothers section. Like his sister Amaterasu, Susanoo was born to rule, but he was tempestuous, with a flaring anger, wicked tongue, and a penchant for destruction. Their father, Izanagi, would have none of it, and decreed that Susanoo must live in the underworld. His mood dark at this news, Susanoo committed heinous acts of vandalism and murder, acts that sent his sister into shameful hiding to disguise her family's shame. Cast low, Susanoo descended to earth on his way to the underworld. He carried only his 10-span sword and regret for his actions. What had his defilements achieved but to envelope the world in darkness, not much more than like his elder brother. This seemed like it was his nature, to broil like a storm, and to frighten and destroy anything that stood in his path. But a storm can also herald life. At a riverside, Susanoo ventured upon an elderly couple, weeping and cradling their young daughter. 8 children they had once, but now only the one remained. 7 devoured by the 8-headed serpent that lay in the riverbed. Susanoo was resolved to atone for his crimes and to prove his father wrong, and to simply be better for himself. Susanoo would slay this beast. 8 traps he laid, 1 for each head of the creature, with 8 tubs of aromatic sake as bait. Aromatic sake. Slithering forward, the Orochi spread its gruesome heads to drink from the trapped tubs. Susanoo cut the rope. Gates dropped. The heads were imprisoned. One by one, he chopped the 8 necks until only the wriggling tail remained. Sweeping his blade, split the reptilian hide, leaving notches in his blade, but revealing a brilliant sword inside, the Kazunaki no Sorogui. To his sister, he gave the blade as an act of atonement, but not an apology. His true nature would never change, but his intention could. Susanoo's fight is not truly with any foe, but within himself. He is a raging summer storm, struggling to focus the destructive power at evil, and atoning for all innocent that are harmed. So that's a good portion of the triplets' major mythological backstory, and a good fun little myth that I may have embellished a little bit about each one. I really love all mythology. It doesn't matter really the pantheon, and I'm hoping that these videos can introduce you all to a bunch of new pantheons that you can take on your own time to read, because there are so many amazing stories out there. But I need help. I need you guys to let me know below. Next up is either Zeus or Thor. Which would you guys like to see more? Or maybe it's neither one. Just leave a comment down below. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.